It's good to be back up here. I love looking out at all of you and seeing your faces. You're smiling with that, what's he going to do now? Look on your face.
We've earned that right to
Yeah.
look at you that way.
Some in glee, some in apprehension. But when I became chair of the worship team, Thea and I talked about an oncoming task for the team. First of all, I just want you to say, when I say I'm chair of the worship team, what I really mean is I'm interim Thea until she comes back again. She's working on the search team, so. We knew that we were going to be without a full-time interim minister for the coming year or longer. And Thea and I postulated that as we had both done so many services from this pulpit over the years, most of them long ago, that we might be able to recycle and rewrite a few of them. Now, Thea scored with her theology 2.0 service. So I looked back through some of mine, and I was surprised there were a lot more than I remembered. Like there was the one that was called Politics and Religion, when I wanted to be safe up here. My Father's Day sermon, which some of you had said was a favorite, where I realized I actually had two daddies that I found out just earlier that year. And then there was the I was trapped in a cave and was saved by a miracle sermon. I even did a full Christian service wearing my clerical collar, just so you folks would see that you could sit through it and not burst into flames. Not a single person caught on fire. I went way, way back for today's homily. It was shortly after Diane and I joined here in 1995, and I had become your first salary DRE. In that capacity, one of my first tasks was joining Bill Bartlett, who insisted that I crawl under that annex building and look at the way the plumbing was set up so I would feel safe being in that building. I told him I was fine, but I ended up under there anyway. And I will always have a soft spot for that annex, and we'll remember it even when it's not sitting there any longer. By the way, the tie that I'm wearing today, this is a tie that was given to me on my last day as DRE, and it's signed by the members of my YRUU, Young Religious Unitarians Universalist group, that I had led through a few years, traveling all around visiting other YRUU communities. So I wore this for them today. Anyway, on one cold winter's evening back then, that's when we still had cold winters, I was thinking about the youth programs and future field trip ideas for the teen group as I sat in front of our fireplace stitching up holes in an old quilt. And that's the story that I'm going to tell you today. Here goes. I had had the quilt since I was just a child, and over the years it had amassed a formidable number of stains, tears, and holes. In fact, it was such an old, ratty quilt, worn and faded, that anyone looking at it would have thought, why bother stitching it? Why not just toss it? But though it had lost much of its stuffing, it was still filled with love. For this quilt was made for me by my aunt, whose name actually was Love Oliver. Her husband, my Uncle Ben, was sexton of the Nazarene church where I attended and served as a sort of altar boy in my youth. Aunt Love and my parents both worked, so during the week, Uncle Ben would care for me and take me to work with him. I literally grew up in a church, sleeping in the pews, playing in the nursery, floating my toy boats in the baptismal pool. All of that while Uncle Ben cleaned the church. During nights, Aunt Love quilted, often while watching wrestling, or as she called it, wrestling. Any scrap of fabric left over from any sewing project went into her quilting bin. and eventually found a home in one of her quilts. The quilt that I was stitching that night had warmed me through many cold Tennessee nights. As I grew older, it became a couch comforter to keep the chill off on cool evenings in New York. Eventually, it evolved into a picnic and beach blanket in California. When we made our move here to North Carolina, I discovered it again. It had been used as packing for some of the things we had brought. While unpacking here, I held it up and decided to repair it as best I could because I just couldn't part with it. As I sat sewing up the holes and tears, I thought of Aunt Love's hands holding the very fabric that I was holding, stitching it, taking her time to make every seam perfect. Yet a close inspection would reveal that she was quite lenient in her choices of fabrics. Many pieces were not an exact match to others in its pattern. Some were not even close. Yet when looked at from afar, they all fit together perfectly. The difference is actually adding more beauty to the overall effect. Separate, very different scraps of cloth brought together to make a special pattern. Unity from the diverse. Whole from the parts. It struck me. This was a Unitarian Universalist quilt. As I finished my stitching and wrapped myself up in the quilt my Aunt Love had made for me years before, I remembered her smile, her calloused yet somehow still soft hands, her loving devotion. I even remembered digging through her quilting bin one day and asking her why she kept every little scrap of cloth she found. She just smiled and said, "There's a place for all those different pieces, Jerry Joe. Everything has a place somewhere." And as her work of love warmed me that evening, I thought, yes, it does, Aunt Love. Indeed it does, and I fell into a peaceful sleep, wrapped in her comforting mantle of diversity. Yes, I grew up in a very Christian church. I've always told folks that the Nazarenes were like the Baptists, but without all the fun and partying. But I long ago left the church of my youth as my life's path led me to question and to seek. Now, I still like and admire many of the Christian teachings I learned: to love one another, help the needy, feed the hungry. But I know I'm also part pagan and a bit Buddhist and Sufi and much, much more. Like Aunt Love's quilt, I'm a patchwork, which is why I'm a member here. Here I'm accepted, no matter my beliefs, blanketed by the warmth of understanding and cared for when I need mending. Just like my Aunt Love's quilt, here in our congregation, all the pieces fit, no matter what you believe or do not believe. That was the original homily. I'm going to expound on it a bit, because I realize I've never given you all my "as a UU, I believe" confession. I believe in God. I pray often. My friend Artie Stoney once posted on Instagram that we all believed in the magic of prayer in one way or another, saying Christians, Muslims, and Jews call it prayer. Spiritualists call it manifestation. Humanists call it the universe. Witches call it spells. Atheists call it the placebo effect. And scientists, he's not wrong. And scientists, Jimmy, you'll confirm, scientists call it quantum physics. Everyone is arguing over the name, but nobody's denying its existence, and I like that thought. And lately, I've also been thinking about Dave Novak's service. If you weren't here to see it, please look at it on our YouTube channel. It was pretty darn amazing, which is why I waited a few weeks before I followed him. I liked his story of his son asking if pizza was God, and Dave's tortured answer, yes, followed by his description that universal plasma runs through everything and every being as a part of its cellular construct. Well, if that's God, that works for me. Being a UU, I am free to choose whichever explanation of my personal belief that I choose. We all do. It's why we're so often stumped when someone asks us, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? Or conversely, worse, do you guys celebrate anything? I always say we celebrate every single thing that has food and beverages attached to it. When someone asks you, what do Unitarian Universalists believe, I would like to ask you to think carefully about your answer. Because too many times I have heard a declarative introduction. Unitarian Universalists believe, or conversely, Unitarian Universalists don't believe, and I'm asking you to please don't do that, because I promise you whatever you say next is not true for all UUs. Have you met us? Whatever you say is probably going to be taken as an exception to some Unitarian Universalist somewhere. I too often hear a UU say something that is a broad brush statement about what UU is or isn't, and I think, well, it's not me. That's not me at all. For instance, I personally have no problem with using the word God. Hell, it's in our fourth principle. Using Jewish and Christian teachings to call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. I'm not afraid of seeing a cross. I'm a UU, not a vampire. We have two crosses in our triptych right here. One of them is the symbol for universalism, for Christ's sake. I'll say, not for nothing, I am fine singing Christian hymns at Christmas time. It's just a song, not a confirmation or conversion. I'm more uncomfortable singing something we've rewritten to make it palatable. Not to mention that UU Christians are one of the largest growing subsections of our faith. Just check out our UUA website. Not ours, the big one. I know that it's troublesome because many of us, myself included, left Christianity to look for something that was better. And it's exceptionally hard today when we see so much in the news about Christians who are not behaving like Christ at all. But that's another broad brush. Don't fall for it. I have three longtime friends, Arnold, Ronnie, and Bryce, who are Christian ministers. They and their congregations do real mission work. They feed the hungry. They clothe the poor. They help the homeless. And they are justice seekers, just as we are. But they don't have the money or the political backing or get the press that mega fundamentalist churches do. Keep in mind, you can't judge all by what the news tells you. I also remember, and many of you here will, Jack Guberman. Jack was one of our longtime, one of my favorite UUs here, because he would say, I am not a Unitarian, I'm a Junitarian. And he and so many other members loved it when we celebrated Passover and other Jewish traditions precisely as they were meant to be celebrated. In the 20-plus years I've been here, we've had Wiccan, Muslims, and so many other parts of religions here in our congregation. We are a vast minority of people. We're a small sect, but we are vast in the number of things we believe in. I see that our differences, like the fabric triangles in my Aunt Love's quilt, are one of the greatest things about Unitarian Universalism. It doesn't matter what you believe, or even if you believe, or if you change your mind later. It's the very reason I am proud to be a Unitarian Universalist. We are a faith of acceptance, and we are free to explore our own paths to spiritual enlightenment or freedom from it. It doesn't bother me to sing Christian songs any more than it bothers me to read from the Torah, Book of Islam, the teachings of Buddha. I love to sit down and talk with humanists about their thoughts and practices, and atheists. I have a good friend named Lee Lauermore, and who said he didn't believe in God, and I said, "Are you an atheist?" And he said, "Oh God, no, I don't have enough faith not to believe in anything." All of you, I respect your inherent worth and dignity and your beliefs. So may I make a suggestion? When somebody says, "What do Unitarian Universalists believe?" I recommend that you start with, "Well, I'm a UU, and I believe," and then tell them what you honestly believe. But at the end say, "But other UUs may believe something else, and you can believe something else, because whatever you believe is just okay here." It always makes me smile when we say, "We are like-minded people." And again, I say, have you met each other? I've never assumed that another UU thinks like me or prays like me or believes like me. I ask them what they believe, and if you do that, you're going to have some very interesting conversations, trust me. You'll also find out you're not all like-minded at all. We do like each other, though, very much. Very, very much.
Enjoy this musical interlude.
I've never done a dance break in a sermon before, and I promise you I will never do it again.
But today was the day.
Today was the day. As I was saying, we do like each other very much. I'm always happy to worship here, if not exactly like you do.
God is present.
It's like the flashlight.
I told you to wait. Oh, we do. We like each other a lot. You know what? I think because we all do share most of the same values or ideals, maybe instead of saying we are like-minded people, we should say we are a values-minded people. When it comes to what all Unitarian Universalists believe, I can say with certainty we believe in each other. You know what? Maybe that's the short form answer. When someone asks you, "What do UUs believe?" say, "We believe in each other." Amen. Namaste. Shalom. Blessed be. Whatever.
Love it.